recording here in a second. There we go. Thanks, Pat. And so, as I was saying, one of the things I always ask the incoming freshmen is, did you ever take a class in high school? A class, a course, even just a couple of lessons on identifying how you learn and how you learn best. And I almost never get any hands raised. Maybe one or two said, well, I remember one of my high school teachers talking to me about learning and some of the ways that I learn. But very few of them ever received that kind of introduction, if you will, into something that they should have had way back in their high school days. And so on Friday, I showed you a link that, if you had time over the weekend to look at it, God bless you. But if you didn't, I hope it is something that you will look at, because it is so important then when you send your students from high school to college or into the world, wherever they plan to do when they graduate, that they have some ideas about their strength in learning. I would ask them, I said, how many of you, if I were to give you or tell you that tomorrow I'm giving you a 100-question true false multiple choice test, and I let you go from class today, and I followed you back to your house or your dorm or to the library or wherever you go to study, what would I see? How do you study best? And I asked them, how many of you have to have music playing in the background if you're going to study? And I'd get, a third of the class raise their hand. Yeah, I gotta have those stupid things in my ears. I gotta be listening to music. That's how I study best. And then I said, well, how many of you have to have it quiet to study? And another third would go up, and they'd say, yeah, I have trouble studying in the dorms, or I have even trouble studying at home because it's noisy, and I can't study. I got to be quiet. Well, how many of you have to study by reading your textbook and taking out, your little highlighter and highlighting the important parts of the book? And I get a few more hands that go up. How many of you like to create notes on a little 3x5 card? And then as you get ready to study for a test, you start flipping through the cards, and a number of other hands would go up. And so we would spend about an hour talking about these different learning styles. Excuse me. Now, if I were going to do it today, I'd say, how many of you learn best asynchronously? You like to get onto a web page. You like to get into a learning management system like Blackboard. You'd like to have your teacher send you things in an email that you can go through at your own pace. And my guess is another third of the class would raise their hand. How many of you would learn much better synchronously? I want to see my teacher. I want an environment like this in which I can ask questions. I can watch my teacher's face when they're teaching. It tips me off to a lot of things. I can learn better synchronously. And so we would probably need to take that web page that I gave you and change it a little bit, saying that, okay, let's look at some of the tips for a learner. So again, after this workshop today, as we start to look at some of the synchronous tools that you have available, you need to build that into in your interactions with your students. It's not one or the other, is it? That's why this third session is called blending these things together. You're going to have to deal with some students who just tell you that they're very bad with online learning. I mean, it's not a panacea. It's not the answers to everything. We have just as many students that don't learn well online as we have new students that do learn well. I mean, I've talked to some students and they said, I'm really bad with time management. I'm really not good with technology. I'm really not comfortable doing these things on my own. And so we just have to look at some of the tools that we have and show them things that might be different. So today, what I wanted to do was is to begin this workshop by looking at the three most popular platforms for synchronous learning. Certainly, we are in one right now. The Google Meet is becoming more and more popular. It has features that are kind of unique with it. But any school that is embracing the idea of Google Classrooms and Google tools is going to pick the Google Meet platform. So we're going to start by looking at this a little closer. I want you to be able to see some of the other things that that Google Meet has for you. And then I'm going to show you Zoom. Okay. Now Zoom, like Google Meet, it also has its strengths. You're going to see some features in in Zoom that you don't have in Google Meet. And for what it is you want to do with your class, you may decide that that Zoom is a better platform for you. We'll compare and contrast those. And then I want to show you what we use at Robert Morris. It's part of the Blackboard system. Some K-12 are using Blackboard. Some of them find it too expensive to use. Goodness knows, Blackboard is not cheap. But again, I want to show you some of the features that Blackboard offers in a application called Collaborate, and specifically Collaborate Ultra. Again, what I want you to do this morning is to maybe keep a little notepad in front of you and write down the features and maybe put them in, like 3 columns, or 4 columns, and call one Meet, call one Zoom, and call one Ultra. And down the left-hand side, start writing each of these features that we're going to look at, like the ability to mute and unmute, the ability to record, the abilities to have breakout rooms, and so forth. And maybe just put little checks next to the features that appear in each one of these packages, so that when it comes time for you to deliver a synchronous session, which is probably going to be sooner rather than later from everything I've been reading now. It looks like most of the schools are talking about at least delaying for the first couple of weeks. We've got some schools that are offering traditional classroom and online. We got some that are offering traditional online and a hybrid. My goodness. We're kind of hitting all the possibilities here. So at some point, you're going to have to tweak your course, create lessons and lesson plans in which you're going to deliver some of these synchronous or asynchronous. And I want you to be able to look at this and say, I need a breakout room for this class project that I'm doing online. And if I look at my little chart that Dr. Tomei just showed me during workshop 3, I know that Google Meet doesn't really have a breakout room, at least not a very easy one to use. We'll talk about that in a second. But I know that Zoom has a real easy breakout room, and I can assign students to that very quickly. And so maybe for this particular lesson, instead of using Google Meet, I'll use I'll use Zoom. Now, of course, you're going to have to discuss that before you use any of these media with your principal, with your curriculum designer. You don't want to go using any of these tools without somebody knowing what it is you're doing and how you're doing it. Okay, so I would, I'm sure that I'm speaking for Mr. Plosnick and Dr. Deacon about saying, look, please let us know the kinds of tools that you intend to use in your class. But it's also important that they all understand that certain of these packages have features that are much better than others. So with that is kind of an introduction. Let me spend a little bit of time right now sharing the other features that we have here in Google Meet. And again, as we start hitting each of these features, if you'll simply make that little list for yourself and put check marks next to things so that you can compare and contrast these, what I'm calling now, these blended modalities, these things, these options that you might have. Anybody got any questions or issues as we get started? Emily, who's that beautiful little child sitting in your lap?
Larry. This is Gianna.
Gianna, all right. There you go. Go ahead, Tim.
Larry, well, we appreciate the Collaborate also on Blackboard. It is unlikely that we're going to be able to purchase that and use that, but it still gives me, if nothing else, Endeavor some insight into how the tools that it has. I used Blackboard way back several years ago in a grad program. I actually like it. I think it'd be a fantastic tool. But then again, it's the resources that are necessary to implement.
Totally understand, and I won't spend much time on it. I just wanted you to know that for your seniors that are getting ready to graduate, they're going to be going to universities and colleges, and a number of them will use Blackboard as their learning management system. And so I just want you to be able to see some of the things that are available. We will not be spending much time on it, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the features of Google Meet. Now, you might look at these and think, well, we've been doing this for last couple of hours, but there'll probably be some features here that I'd like to talk about that we haven't at least mentioned, okay? And so each of you are now looking at a screen, excuse me, in which we have a layout that is provided by Zoom. So let's talk about each of the pieces of Google Meet. Let me see if I can keep myself straight here. Okay. I don't know if you noticed that when you logged into the Google Meet session a few minutes ago, that you were placed in what was called a waiting room. And the waiting room occurred because as the host, myself, and these again are things that you can do as a teacher. The teacher will be the host for the session. And as the host, I could create a waiting room, or I could allow you to come straight into the session. I opted, as probably everybody should as you get used to this, to create the waiting room. And this is a place, again, where the students have logged in already, and a little thing pops up, a little notification pops up on my screen that says, Phil McCarron is asking to come into the session. And as the teacher, you can admit him, or you can not admit him, or you can keep him waiting in the waiting room, almost like a doctor's office. You're in there interminably. But The idea behind the waiting room is fairly simple. I also use Google Meet for my office hours, my virtual office hours. And so I always create a waiting room there. And when students come in and ask for some time with me, I can admit them one at a time so that they're not all in there listening to other people's questions or other people's issues regarding things like registration and so on. So the waiting room is a nice feature. So think about that when you're creating your own materials, your own workshop, your own Google Meet session. Down in the bottom left, you can see, and hopefully it pops up on the screen, what's called the workshop details. Okay, and you got that by just clicking on the arrow, the up arrow over here on the left side. Now, what this has for you is information that you probably already know, but it's still important for you to understand. On the left side of your features, put down timed sessions, okay? And under Google Meet, you can put down open or untimed or no restriction, whatever you want to say. Because for the free version, even with the free version of Meet, we do not have a mandatory time frame. We can stay in this session as long as we want. You're going to find that in Zoom, which I'll show you, in a few minutes, I'll show you next, that it does have time. The free version does. Okay, and so that is an issue for you. If you're running a class like this one that could be a couple of hours, Zoom is not, and that's why I didn't pick Zoom as the modality for us, because whenever you have more than 20 students in a Zoom session, it limits you to 40 minutes. They want you to buy Zoom. Okay, so this one shows you the actual web address for the course, but the real reason I wanted to show you this is because it shows you the phone number and a PIN. So you might indeed have students that for whatever reason do not have the technology to join your session, okay, like we have here with laptops and so on. Now, I'm going to assume that most students have computers and have laptops, and it's obviously in a synchronous session best if the students join us not only for the audio, but for the video as well. But I have students in my courses that say, hey, look, I don't have the technology, or I'm not going to have the technology when I go to Myrtle Beach. And the family's going there this week, and I'd like to be able to join the session, but I won't have my computer there. So your students should also know that this dial-in number with the PIN will get them into the session. Obviously, they'll come up. It'll look like a little telephone, actually, instead of the video. So that's a feature. Phone-in features is a feature that you may want to have. The students can obviously listen to everything that's going on, and they can also, but they obviously cannot see. So that severely limits them, but it's better than nothing. The other thing that is very useful sometimes is we have students who, for some reason, their microphone crumps out on them. Their webcam is working fine, but we can't hear them. Okay, so for whatever reason, it's perfectly acceptable for a student to log in like this, use their webcam for the video so they can watch everything, but then they can have their cell phone right next to them, and they can dial in and communicate with us just as well as if they're using the computer audio. So those are all characteristics that are fairly important. You certainly know by now how to mute both your phone and your camera. But what is really kind of interesting, if you can watch this, I'm going to hit Julia. Julia, do me a favor and unmute your microphone and say hi.
Hello.
Okay, so there's Julia. I've got 26 other participants in this workshop, and all of a sudden I realize that Julia's dog is barking in the background, or her kids are running through, or for whatever reason, I'd like to mute Julia. Now, if for some reason she's not paying attention to me and she's not, I would ask her to mute her mic. But as the host, I can mute Julia. Okay, so that gives you some degree of control. So host mute is a feature that you want to write down, because you're going to have situations like that. Now, I cannot mute her web camera, but I can mute her microphone. So, and every once in a while, I'll get a student who's becoming a nuisance to me, and I will, and usually because they're not paying attention, okay, because I ask them, please mute your mic, and they don't do it. So you can do that as the host. I can also remove anybody from the meeting. Okay, so if I want to punch this number, Julia's out of here, and she can try to come back in. But then if she's in the waiting room and she's been an issue, I can opt not to let her back in. So again, those are the kinds of controls that you can have as a host. Very, very powerful control. Okay. There's another issue that says pin to screen. I've never used that. So, I mean, you can try it sometime if you want to see what that does for you. All right. So let's move along now to the right. I showed you how, or talked at least, I believe, about turning on captions. I just turned on the captions to my screen, and hopefully you will see the captions popping up here momentarily. Here they come. Okay, so very useful, very useful. The captions obviously help us with ADA accommodations. We have a lot of students who have hearing issues, and so this is the way to take care of students that need that special accommodation. It's lovely. So,
did we see something?
We're not seeing any captions.
oh, okay, you can't see it. Sorry about that. But take my word for it, as a fellow Catholic, fellow OLSH person, it's down on the bottom of my screen. All right, and you try it yourself. Turn the caption on. The teacher can't turn on captions. What's that say?
The student has to turn on the captions.
Yeah, the students have to turn them on. Okay. Okay, so the captions are really, again, a nice feature, and I would suggest those. I can use those to accommodate, like I said, my hearing impaired, but also, I think I mentioned this on the first day. Last couple weeks ago, we were doing a cyber camp, and we had a number of international students who were in the camp. And one in particular was a teaching assistant. And when she was trying to deliver something in the course that was assigned to her that was quite technical, it was in a programming language called Unix. And she was showing us how to create commands and how to put those commands in and get them to do things. It was difficult to understand her. And so we had everybody turn on their closed caption. And the closed caption was very effective. Jeff asked the question, does captions translate to other languages? I'll be totally honest with you, I don't know. Who's our Spanish teacher?
Allison.
Allison Nolte.
Allison.
Allison, talk to us in Spanish.
Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo estás?
Okay. One more time.
Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo estás?
It doesn't translate, but it picks up the Spanish. It picks up the Spanish very well. Hello, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? I don't see a way to get it to translate, but it, like I said, it sure picks up the Spanish. Excellent. That was a great question. Thank you. I wonder if you could pair this with Google Translate. You guys are right on the ball. I think that would be terrific. Let's see here. I'm actually gonna try it. I'm going to copy from the caption and open up Google Translate. Enter the text. I bet it will. I mean, they could do that. Everybody see what I'm doing?
No.
I don't know how to spell it. Oh, okay. You don't see that?
No. Share your screen.
Okay, that's all right. Basically, what I did was I copied the text right from. I am sharing my screen, all right? Oh no, I'm not. All right. Good thing I got Pat here today. Otherwise, okay. All right. Here comes the screen. Okay. And so now you can see the closed caption.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And what I was doing is I was just capturing it right out of closed caption, opening up Google Translate, pasting it right into there, and there's the translation. So another wonderful tool that that we can use. Well done, folks. Good questions and good suggestions. This is why when we get done today, when I did these workshops back in the 90s with Mr. Plosnick and the faculty at the time on just regular technology, just technology, one of the things that we had everybody do when the workshops were over was to create a lesson. Okay, they had to create a lesson. And I know one of the things that Tim will talk about at the end of today is doing something similar, okay, with you guys dealing with online teaching. Maybe create an asynchronous lesson or a synchronous lesson, or just something that will get you now more hands-on in what we're doing. So your best resources when this is all over is going to be one another. You know, walk down the hallway, find Jeff in the thing and say, hey, Jeff, I'm trying to do something with Google Meet and I can't get it to work. And have both of you sit down at a computer and figure it out. That's probably the best thing that we could advise you to do. Okay, let's keep going here. I'm going to turn my captions off. And obviously what I'm showing you now with the you are presenting, okay, is the feature that allows everybody to see your work. Now, again, only, I think the way this is set up is only one person can present at a time, which makes sense. And so, but under the presenting option, okay, you're able, and I know I just stopped presenting for a second, you can present three things: your entire screen, okay, which is what I was doing a minute ago, a particular application. So let's say you're running a PowerPoint presentation. You can set up a window that only shows your PowerPoint, and the student can't see anything else on your screen, only the PowerPoint presentation. Okay? So let me ask you, teachers, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to set it up so that the student can only see my PowerPoint presentation on one side of the screen and not the rest of it?
Distractions.
Say it again.
Distractions.
Discussion. Yeah, that's one good reason. Give me another one.
So you can keep an eye on your students.
One more time, Tyler.
So you can keep an eye on your students.
Okay, that's right. One of the things that, you know, if the screen is over here, I can still see everybody over here. Okay. And there's one more good reason. Okay. If the student is seeing my PowerPoint presentation over here, what could I have over here to help me teach? I could have a Word document over here like this, and I could use this to teach. And then the students think, well, isn't she smart, right? Look at that, just perfectly goes right along with it, got all the information. Isn't she wonderful? Okay, so again, the you are presenting is very, very useful, and certainly what you want to do in most cases. To the right of that is this ellipse. And we talked about this a little bit, but just as a reminder, stop recording or recording. This is how you initiate recording in a Google Meet session. Put that on your list of features. Recording, yes. Okay. You can also change the layout, another feature. So in this particular case, I'm using tiled, but I could also use a sidebar. Okay. I could also use a spotlight. Okay. So you can change this to one of 3 different kinds of layouts. Very, very useful. Okay. Meeting details. We talked about how we have this extra box up here for the people. So I can get a list of everybody who's in the class. This is how I take attendance in my course. Notice that this isn't exactly the way I would do it, but it alphabetizes everybody by first name, or more importantly, about how you logged in. Okay, so if you logged in as Mocha, Brian, then it's going to show the M for Mocha. If you signed in as Brian Mocha, then it goes by the B. So sometimes that takes a little bit of getting used to. But again, this shows everybody who's in the session, even with the tiled pictures on the screen. It doesn't show everybody if you're over, I think, 24 people. So, so there you go. Notice that each of the names over here shows me, has a little down arrow, and again, gives me the same options I had before. I can mute you, or I can remove you from the meeting. I cannot unmute you. Okay? You have to unmute you. Okay? So that is something to remember. In my class, the last session that I have is always final presentations. Okay? Final presentations, where I have the student present their screen. So I give them the option to present. Very powerful. Okay? So anybody that says well, I can't use this because I do a lot of group work. Group work is very much possible with the use of Google Meet, and as you'll see in a minute, Google Zoom as well. Okay, so but my point was, I had a student, and I told him, I said, you get 15 minutes to do your presentation, not a minute longer. And so when I gave her the go to start her presentation, she forgot to unmute her microphone. Okay. And she was focused on her PowerPoint. And, you know, all we got was, you know, we saw the mouth moving, but none of us could hear her. I could not unmute her microphone. Only she could. Okay, I'll get Jeff. And so what did I do? I'm waving like this, you know, I'm trying to get her to please understand she's still muted, but she wasn't watching me. She was watching her screen, which is probably what she's supposed to do. We tried sending her a chat message. She wasn't reading the chat room. She did a 14.5-minute presentation, and then she was finished, and she was waiting for my comments. And I said, we did not hear a word you said. And I made her do it over again. So wasn't the greatest situation, but my point is, before they start, make sure you have some sort of communication going on. Okay, test your mic for me, Tyler. Let me know I can hear you. Okay, Tyler, we hear you. Now you can proceed. So little tips. And the final thing in the meeting detail, of course, is the chat room. Jeff asked what happens if two students try to show their screens at the same time. This won't let you do that. Okay, only one person can present as long as somebody has captured the screen. Unless I stop presenting, nobody else can get in. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. Okay, all right, so those are the features of Google Zoom that allow you to really do some pretty cool things. Notice now I didn't mention some other features. Okay, some other features that you may, can you stop a student's presentation? I can't stop them from presenting, but I can remove them from the meeting, which is a nefarious way to do the same thing. Okay, not sure why you'd want to do that, but you know you have the option. Yeah, I can always remove them from the meeting. Okay, I'm usually very strict with my students. I'll usually ask them to make sure that they take their smartphone out, they turn it to the clock feature, and they time themselves. That's what I'm trying to do with my students, is say, look, you are the teacher. Okay, I gotta ask, Jeff, what are you drinking? Hold it up to the screen. Oh, okay. It looked like a bottle of Jack Daniels. That's why
That's what's inside, but the label just says
There
tea.
you go. Okay. That just looked too much like Jack Daniels. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, I make it clear to them that at 15 minutes, I will interrupt. I will stop them. But if they did like the other gal did, where she muted me, she wasn't able to hear. So yeah, you can stop them. Okay, now those are the features of Google Meet. Now, one of the issues, and Dr. Hansen just mentioned something that I was going to mention here in a second. Google has opted to offer a lot of extensions, a lot of sidebar apps, if you will, to do a lot of other things. She just mentioned that, that there's a Google extension for taking attendance. Yeah, that's true, you know, but I don't use it because I just simply go down through this list here and check them off. But there is an extension. There's an extension that I've heard about, and I tried the other day over the weekend, called Google Discussion or Google Boards or something like that. But I got to tell you, it's a little they're a little convoluted. Now, my guess is the Google programmers are scurrying to add those kinds of features right in here. Okay, because I'm going to show you now Zoom. Okay, for those of you that have used Zoom, okay, I apologize, but so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off my camera with you guys so that when I bring Google Zoom on, I can use my video here. Okay. Now, I just want to show you some of the features in Google Zoom and have you compare that with Zoom with Google Meet. Okay. And again, unfortunately, I'm the only one in here. I was going to give you all access to this, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll just show you stuff and we'll move on. Okay. Notice one of the things that we ought to talk about here whenever it comes to doing synchronous sessions, and that is your background and your lighting. Okay. This is simply a way, you know, you have to test this out before you start. But you ought to be looking at the location in which you're running your synchronous session, because it can be very, what's the right word? Distracting. Okay, I'm looking around at you guys, and most of you are just fine. We got no problems with your background. I'm looking at Dr. Hansen, and I would suggest to her she figure out a way to put a little light in front of her, which is what I just did. Okay, the backdrop is very light, and so it kind of makes her face a little darker. Other people in a hotel, oh well. So you have some limitations. You know, Bethany is in front of a brick wall. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Everybody else is kind of against a generic wall. But and so all of that is just fine. No problem. You got me in what my grandkids call my jelly. I never understood how it got that name, but whenever they come over to Grandpa's, they want to go play in the jelly, and that's my den, you know, with the required IKEA bookcases and you know, a few other things that kind of make it Pittsburgh. A lot of people will like to put backdrops behind themselves, and you can actually do that in Zoom. So put that down as a feature that is not in Google Meet. It's not in Blackboard Ultra, but it is in Zoom. And I'll let you try to figure out how to do that on your own. But there are backdrops that you can put behind you in Zoom to make it look like you're on the beach, you're in the office, you're on the, you know, you're in a conference room. And a lot of people kind of like to use that. Okay. So this is a Zoom window. Does everybody see that? Okay. Just nod so I can make sure that, okay, good. And you can see some of the same features, okay, that we have in Meet, and some things a little different. So let me just kind of go through these with you very quickly. Certainly we have a mute and an unmute button over here. So if that's a feature that you have on your list so far, you can certainly mark that you can do that with Zoom. Okay. Notice, however, though, with this one, there are some other options that Zoom allows you to do. In other words, what's really nice is you can test the speaker, you can switch to phone. There's a number of features that that are in here. Sorry about that. I am not going to unmute my microphone for Zoom because why? What will happen? You got to shout real loud for me. Big echo. That's exactly right. Okay. Everybody knows what the echo does.
Yeah.
Now, okay. That's because I've got two different applications vying for the same speaker. So we won't do that. Okay. But that's one of the issues. I can start and stop my video. Okay. And I just gave you the answer to my little test question a few seconds ago, because this is how you change your background. Okay. So that's kind of a neat feature. You can go in there and I can put, you can download backgrounds and make it look like I'm sitting there on the International Space Station. Okay. Neat little feature. It's under Stop Video, under Virtual Backgrounds. Okay. Let's just look at some of the other features that are here for you. Certainly, it has its own chat room, works exactly the same as Google Meet. Okay, and so we can try things. One of the things that Zoom, I think, does that I don't think Google Meet does. Let me bring Google Meet back up for just a second. I want to try something here for you. In the chat room. No, it does it too. Good. Look at what you can do. I hadn't mentioned this, but for sure, one of the things that I like to do is it will keep the entire chat for the entire session. Okay. And so at the end of the session, you always have the ability to just cut, copy, and paste the entire chat session. Okay. Just copy that, bring it over to a Word document and paste it in there and save it. Okay. So think of what you can do with this as a teacher. You can keep the entire chat session. So why would you want to do that? Well, the chat session could become a discussion room for you. Okay. And then you could copy it and send it to all your students and let them use this as a teaching tool. Okay. All right. So that's the chat session. Certainly we can share the screen. Now, this screen share is a little different than Google Meet. Okay. This is sharing your entire screen, which is exactly the same as it was in Google Meet. You share your screen. What I like about Zoom is that you can share a whiteboard, and there is not that same feature with Google Meet. I think this is another app that they might be considering if they don't already have it. But with the whiteboard, now I can share a whiteboard with my students. Okay. I can see all sorts of reasons to do that. 4 times, 5, you can add text to the whiteboard. You can spotlight things. You can erase the blackboard. You got the idea? This is called the whiteboard. So when you share your screen, you can share a whiteboard. And then these are the different applications that I currently have up. So it's just like with the Google Meet. If I want to share my PowerPoint presentation and only my PowerPoint presentation, that's how you would do it. Okay, so lovely options right there. All right, this also has closed captions. Okay, and so you can open and close closed captions, with Zoom as well. Okay, now here's two features that I didn't show you in Google Meet. Okay, so add these to your list. The first one is breakout rooms, and I love it. I mean, if you intend to use breakout rooms for your class, then Zoom is probably the way you want to go. Okay, now we don't have anybody else but me here, but I just wanted to show you I can create rooms. Okay, so let's say I got 25 kids in the class, and I can create 5 breakout rooms very easily, and I can assign students. Now remember, there's no other participants but me, but you just sign them to the room. All the names of the students would pop up here, and you say, I want 1, 5, 7, 9, and 11 in breakout room number 1. Okay, and then as soon as all the assignments are done, you just open the rooms, and you can tell the students go to those rooms, and they'll pop up on their screen, and they can go work with their friends, with their peers in that room, and you can go visit every one of those rooms individually. Okay, you can also you can have a countdown. In other words, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk about this subject, this question. Okay, and so I'll set that countdown, and then after the countdown is over, I'm going to close the room. Okay, so it's really a nice feature. Anybody have any questions on the breakout rooms? Okay, so again, I would thoroughly suggest that if breakout rooms are something that you want to use, that you might consider creating a Zoom session. Okay, now let me finish this one up, and then we can enter full screen over here. That's easy. But the other thing that it has, which is kind of nice, is this thing called reactions. So if I want to do a quick poll of my students and say, how many of you are enjoying this presentation, you can just quickly go over here and pop a thumbs up, which goes away after a few seconds. Okay, and I don't think we had that feature in Google Meet. At least I don't recall seeing it. Okay, so that's Google Meet. Instead of a little phone to leave the session, we can end it over here. But again, as a reminder, when you create a Google meeting, it has some restrictions on it based on whether you buy the full updated version or you're using the free version. Okay, so I'm going to leave this meeting, and I just want to see if I can do a quick demonstration. I'm going out to Zoom. Okay, I'm going to, if this is something that you intend to do, you can sign up for free. Okay, there are limitations, as I mentioned, but it will tell you that as you go along. If you want to host a meeting, you just sign in. You got to create yourself a quick account, but you schedule a meeting. So let's say I call this RMU Class 3. Okay, you set up the time and the date and the duration. Now here's the limit. Your Zoom basic plan has a 40-minute limit with 3 or more participants. So if it's just you and one or two other people, they'll let you go forever. But if it's more than 3 participants, which it would be for almost for all of us, then you need to get the upgraded version, and they're more than happy to sell you that. All right. Okay. And so you give it the time zone that you're in, remembering that you guys probably don't deal with this, but I do all the time. Every once I had some kid the other day from San Diego, and I set up a 7 o'clock in the morning appointment with him. He said, "You do realize it's only 3 o'clock in the morning out here, 4 o'clock." I said, "Oops, you're right." And so you want to at least think about that when you're setting it up. Okay. So it doesn't matter what duration you put in here. If you got 3 or more participants, it'll cut you off at 40 minutes, and it doesn't do it gracefully. You're all in the meeting, and all of a sudden it just goes black. You know, you're going, rats. Okay. It has a passcode like Google Meet did, and it has a waiting room. What I like about Zoom is, well, I think Meet did it too. You can turn that waiting room on or off. Okay. So if you turn it off, as soon as they log in, they're coming right into your session. Okay. You usually want to go in as the host, and well, you can see the rest of this stuff. It's pretty easy. This is a good one here. We use Zoom a lot when we have large faculty meetings. I'm talking about Robert Morris with 180 faculty. If you don't mute those guys, you'll never get a word in edgewise. So we mute our participants upon entry. Okay. And then you can actually pre-assign breakout rooms if you want to. So rather than doing them like I was doing, you can do them on your own. So there you go. And that's all it is. The key thing with Zoom is you really do have to create an account first. They don't charge you for it. And then once you create the account, then you can schedule a meeting. Once your meeting is done in Zoom, the same way it is with Meet, you can go in and you can go get your recordings. You can, you can download recordings just like we did in Meet. Okay, very powerful, those two. Okay, now I promised Tim I wouldn't spend much time with you on Ultra, but I want to show it to you because there's a number of other features that I know that that both Google Meet and Blackboard Google Meet and Zoom are working on. Okay, and so let me just show them to you. I won't demo them. Okay. Collaborate Ultra, the nice thing about it is it's actually an integrated application inside Blackboard. So our students, when we do synchronous classes at Robert Morris, we'll use Blackboard because it also has all the other materials that we use in our course. So our syllabus is in there, our journal articles that we have them read. We can do the online assessment in Blackboard. And so this is just another tool within that suite of suite of software applications. Okay. And so with Ultra, we can also record a session. Okay. Which makes it really nice for us. Again, the nice thing is when this session is done recording, I don't have to send it to my students like I would with Google Meet and with Zoom. You know, both of them will send you an email with a link in it. Okay. You know, and we'll be sending those links to Mr. Plosnick and to Dr. Deacon this afternoon, because they're going to send it on to you. Well, with Blackboard, the session is recorded inside Blackboard. And so the student only has to make one other click. The teacher, I don't have to send it to them, and they know it's there. The menu bar has a lot of the same features. It has a microphone to be muted. It has a camera for video. But one of the things that's kind of nice with this is it has a lot more options for the status of each individual. In other words, if I'm going to leave my computer for a little while, I can just click on away, and it shows me as being away. It shows me as being happy, sad, surprised, confused, faster, slower. It sounds like, what is that? Inside Out with Disney, right? You can show me your emotions anytime you want to. If I'm going too fast, students can say, hey, slow down a little bit. You're going way too fast. I'm not keeping up. Or if I'm going too slow, they could say, come on, I've got other things to do. Speed it up. And then they can agree or disagree. So there's a nice little quick poll here that I can use for dealing with formative assessment. Okay. The other thing that it does is it has a little bit more information over here, which I like with each of the attendees. So if all of you were in this session, you would all be listed over here. And one of the things that you can do is click on this, looks like a little guy. I know it's a little hard to see. I'll try to make him a little bigger here. Well, there we go. Looks like a little nondescript person with his hand up in the air. And if you click on that, a little bell goes off and a little signal shows up next to the individual, indicating that you've raised your hand. Neither of the other two have that feature. So you can put that down, raised hands, Meet, no, Zoom, no, other Ultra, yes. And it's nice, especially when the little doorbell rings, okay? Because I know I got a question, I can stop talking, I can go over and look at or listen to the question. So again, I'm showing you these for a couple reasons. Number one, because there are a couple other options that I'm sure other formats are working on that that you want to keep your eyes open for. Okay, we have a chat room, same way as we had over here. Oh, you know what? I don't think I showed this to you with Zoom, because Meet, I don't think Meet has this. When you send an email to Meet, now maybe somebody can tell me I'm wrong, and that's fine. I think you can only send it to everybody. With Zoom, you can send a personal email to anybody that's in the room, and certainly you can do that here as well. You can send a message to everyone or send it to just personal. Okay. When we get back to Google Meet, we can check that out to see if we can send it to just one individual. Okay. With this, there's sharing content, excuse me, which I really like all of the features here. I showed you in Zoom that you could share a whiteboard. Well, you can with this package as well. You cannot, at least I haven't seen one, in Google Meet. Or you can share the application screen, which is, we've done that 100 times. The other thing that's kind of neat with this package that I'm sure the others are working on right now in more of an expanded mode is to do an online poll. Okay, to do some polling. And with Collaborate, you can set up a poll of either multiple choice questions or true false questions, either one. And so I can type a question in here that says, are you enjoying the session? And when I click on start, this box over here pops up in front of all of my students. And they have to answer yes or no. Okay. So when they answer yes or no, the numbers change, obviously. And so I could look at this, and if I got a class of 20 people and 19 of them are saying, yeah, I'm fine, and one of them is saying no, these are non-attributional, so I can't tell who sent the no, but maybe I can take a closer look and see what's going on with that person. Okay, so that's a much more expanded, and I put that in your notes, expanded polling. I mean, Zoom said we could agree or disagree, we could do a thumbs up, but this one actually allows me to ask questions. So I might ask a multiple choice, you know, which of the planets is closest to the sun? Earth, Mars, Venus, Neptune, and I'll get A, B, C, and D over here, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can use it for formative assessment and keep the class rolling along. Okay, I really like that one. Now, Collaborate also has breakout groups. Frankly, I think the one in Zoom is the easiest of the bunch. But here in Blackboard, breakout groups is possible as well. And they set up pretty much the same way. Okay. So what do we got? We have looked at 3 different synchronous packages. Okay. Jeff asks, I'm looking at the chat room now. Does Google Meet have limits to occurrences? Zoom only gives you 50 days. Not that I know of. Okay. I have set up classes in Google Meet for literally my entire 15-week course. Okay. For those of you that have Google accounts, Google email, Gmail, this is even easier for you, because when you set up a Google session, this is my email, this is my calendar. I set it up, okay? I set it up the other day, several days ago, and then I just click one button that says, set up a Google meeting for me, and it gives me the link right there. Zoom requires a little bit of extra work. You got to set up the meeting, you got to copy the link, and then you got to send it to your students. If you have a Gmail account, doesn't work if you're using your OLSH account. If you have a Gmail account, you can create this in your calendar, and all I have to do here is click on names or add names. Okay? Just that simple. And then when I click on save, it says, do you want me to send them an invitation? And they'll get the invitation.
Hey, Larry.
Uh-huh.
Very quickly, the OLSH email accounts are Google accounts.
Oh, well then, okay. Beautiful. Then this ought to work for you. This ought to work for you. And you can't get much easier than that. Okay. And the nice thing about it is when it sends the email, it puts the link in there, it tells them the information, and it asks them whether they're going to accept, you know, the session or not. So this is the way that you can guarantee that your students got the information and are going to be there to participate. Thank you, Tim. That's perfect.
Larry,
Uh-huh.
can you set up subgroups of emails, meaning when a teacher add names by quote period 1, and then within that period 1 they have the individual emails identified, so they don't have to keep
Okay.
typing the names every day?
Deb, you're a little too far. Sister Francine, repeat that question because you're closer to the mic.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't hear you from back there.
To eliminate some multiple typing every day, is it possible to set up subgroups? For example, period 1, I name it period 1, and within period 1, I list all the students that are in there. And so when I add names, when I send out the link, I just type period 1, period 2.
Oh, so you want to use a list address?
Yeah, is that possible?
Let me try it. And the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because I just put in our group email. You can see it here. Our group email for all our part-time faculty.
Okay.
So the answer is yes.
Good. Thanks.
Okay. And the other thing that you can do is, I've got an email for here. I've got another one for here. I might have one for like next week. Here's 2 other, workshops. I could do them all in the same Google Meet session. I don't have to have a different session for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't need all of those sessions. Okay. But it does help if you're going to record the session. Okay. It's just, you'll still get a new email every time you stop recording. So if you record on Monday and you stop, it's going to send you an email Monday afternoon. If you use the same room on Tuesday, that's fine. It'll record a new session and send you the new link on Tuesday afternoon. So that's fine. The only reason I was saying sometimes that's a little confusing is when you start filling up your inbox with all of these links to the different days. That can be a little confusing, but it works fine. Can you set up a meeting to be reoccurring, Nancy? Absolutely. That's kind of what I was showing you. I can set up the same meeting, the same room for an entire semester, if that's what I want to do.
Larry, can I add something about the group creation?
Sure.
Just because I asked to do that for this group to our RMU administrator, and that was something that he had to grant me access to do. I ended up not doing it, but there could be, depending how your system permissions are set up, someone else that has that permission that's not a faculty member may have to set up the classroom groups, but it's sort of a back end thing. I can't answer that question for your organization, but I could answer it for mine.
Yeah. Everybody understood what she said? I could not create that part-time faculty group. That's not something they give me privileges to do at Robert Morris. Okay.
Larry?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Going back a little bit, you were talking about Blackboard and one of the features that it had, the online expanded polling. A very neat feature. A similar thing can be done in either Zoom or Google Meet by using Kahoot, Twitter, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am quite confident that between Google and Zoom.com, that they are working as quickly as they can to offer all of these other features that the other guy is showing you. That's why I wanted you to see the other formats, so that you can start looking for those in whatever application you decide to pick. Because I just know they're going to be doing this. I said there was, when the pandemic started, I made 2 mistakes. I didn't buy stock in Amazon, and I didn't buy stock in Zoom. Had I bought stock in both of those companies, I probably wouldn't be here today with you. That's crazy how things changed in just such a short period of time. But my point is, Zoom is looking at Google trying to catch up with Zoom, and they're both looking to see, what the standard packages are offering. And so this is where your in-service classes can be so useful to you during the year. You know, I'm not going to suggest to you that all of your in-service classes ought to be, focus on synchronous and asynchronous learning, but maybe one of them every once in a while can. And that's where you have the teachers get up and say, hey, look, I know how to do this in Google Meet. All you have to do is bring down this extension and it works just fine. And somebody else can say, you know what? Zoom just came out with this new feature that makes creating breakout rooms even easier. A good topic for in-service, a good topic for cross-faculty discussions. And you guys are probably one of the best schools I've seen to be able to do that. Because when you guys do your in-service, you guys really put some effort into that. And you let your faculty stand up and do the presentations and show them how they use it in the classroom. Okay, any other questions about these three packages? Beautiful. All right. So what I want to do now in about the last half hour that we've got is just kind of talk about the blending piece of it. Okay. And so let's do some recaps. We talked about synchronous tools and we talked about asynchronous tools. And let's just, again, kind of do a recap on what we've looked at. We saw how chat rooms, even though we introduced them with asynchronous, with our discussion of asynchronous formats, is really more of a synchronous feature, but it certainly could be used for both. Okay, so let's just try to tag some of these as we go through here. What could we use chat rooms for in a synchronous session or an asynchronous? Well, not asynchronous, in a synchronous session. Well, you know, we could give the students a question. We can have them think about something that they were supposed to read. We can use it for formative assessment. Okay. I like to use it to make sure that my students are still with me. Okay. I like to use it and say, okay, you've got 5 minutes. I want to know what you thought about chapter, the first section of chapter 3 that you were supposed to read. Or if you're in a lit course, you read Charles Dickens, discuss who the protagonist and the antagonist is in Oliver Twist. Give them a chance to interact. Unfortunately, with a workshop, me ends up doing most of the talking. But I'd like you guys to participate a little right now. Use the chat room. What are some possible ways of using a chat room in an synchronous class? Give me some ideas, particular to your academic content area.
Basic question, follow-ups. For history, cause and effect. Use those 5 minutes to discuss the causes of this, the effects of this.
Let's see what a chat room
is.
students a question, procedure.
Here we go. Socratic seminar could work with live students interacting with the others streaming in. Beautiful. Get opinions about a subject who like which, oh, candidacies for presidency. Yeah, that'll generate some interest on it. Use the chat room to have students give answers to problems. Very good. We talked before about the fact that when you ask a question, the kinds of answers that you expect to give from students will depend on the kind of teacher you are. We've got behavioral teachers who say, I just want to know whether the answer is right or wrong, right? Good. And then we've got the teachers that says, explain to me how you got that answer. A chat room would be an excellent way to foster that. Okay. Art critiques in real time. Beautiful. Go out to a website. Watch this video. Come back and use the chat room to discuss your feelings about it. Good. Okay. We sure spent enough time with application sharing about how to present now. But again, let me encourage you that the present now is not just for the instructor. The present now is a great way for you to have your students present their projects. So for those of you that appreciate authentic assessment, where you want your students doing something, you want them to go study a problem, you want them to create their own PowerPoint presentations. I know in most high schools you guys have senior projects. Do you guys still have those at yeah, okay. Beautiful. Senior projects. This would be an excellent way to have your students deliver the senior projects to hundreds of people, not just the rest of the class, but maybe to a full faculty. Let's have the full faculty in on a student project and see what, Emily has done for her project. Maybe even all of the seniors in, they can watch a presentation done by their peers. A terrific way to do that without them all having to be in your auditorium. Okay. This is also a really good way. We have a course at Robert Morris called public speaking, right? Robert Morris is very proud of its comm skills program. But when I was the vice provost there for a lot of years, every April, every March, I would get a half a dozen students that would come in and talk to me and say, I just can't stand in front of a group. I can't do public speaking. Is there any way I can get a waiver for this course? Well, I used to always encourage them that said, what's your major? And a guy said, well, I'm going to be an accountant. And I said, well, you know what? Believe it or not, accountants give briefings. Accountants have to give presentations. I can't think of a single area in which, in which you're not going to have to present to your boss or your boss's boss or somebody in your life. And so we actually talked about setting up a course in which public speaking was done at a distance. And I had a lot of faculty that said, you can't do public speaking at a distance. That's stupid, And we said, well, it's not stupid. As it turns out, it may become the modality of choice for 2020 and 2021. My son-in-law used to take one-day trips to Charlotte and to New Orleans and to all these really cool places. And now his boss says, you ain't going anywhere. You're going to do your presentation visually using Zoom. And so there you go. So when we look at these tools that we have been talking about, don't just think about tools that you can use, but think about how you can have your students using them. Certainly breakout groups. I have opted to use Zoom several times because I knew I was going to do breakout groups. Okay, and I couldn't find them easily in Meet. Now, somebody in our chat room said, here is an extension for breakout rooms. Hey, I'm more than willing to learn new things. Allison, talk to us about it. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't, but I wasn't sure because right now Zoom doesn't have limitations for educators in terms of the time of a session and other things like that, but we're not sure how long Zoom's going to remain that way for teachers. So I started looking into things that I use in Zoom that are not in the basic version of Meet, but that I could transition to in case in the future Zoom is not free and we're not planning on purchasing it as a school.
Okay, Principal Plosnick, Allison is your first one up for your in-service.
Thank you.
Let her demo both breakout rooms and attendance recording. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Also, we haven't mentioned, but we certainly should, that the use of a synchronous session also opens us up to a full range of classroom presentations. Okay. You can use PowerPoint with synchronous sessions and asynchronous. Lectures, certainly. I was talking to my daughter the other day, an OLSH grad, and Laura is going to be teaching the Intro to Comm Skills course at Robert Morris for the first time virtually beginning at the end of August. And she called me, she said, Dad, I've never done it online. This is a class that's supposed to be done in the classroom. And I said, well, you are going to learn how to use Google Meet to deliver a virtual lecture, and you're going to record it. And then the next time you're done, you're going to deliver it. You're going to let them watch the video. You guys ought to think about doing the same kind of thing. Recording gives you an opportunity to consider making this a really professional presentation. Plus, it also helps any student who needs some help, who wasn't able to be in your class. And again, that's what I do with my courses. I tell my students, look, I want you there Monday night for my synchronous session. I can't be there Monday night. I work Monday nights. Okay, if you can't be there Monday night, on Tuesday morning, I will send you the link to the recorded session. You watch the recorded session and you send me a 2 to 3 page paper along with questions that you have. I can't tell you how many of those students will do everything in their power to show up on Monday night so they don't have to write me a 2 to 3 page paper. And so anybody that really can't make it, they write me the paper. I read them over, make sure that they understood everything. They watch the video, and we're cool. So that's how you can turn an asynchronous lesson into a synchronous one, or the other way around, a synchronous one into an asynchronous one. Okay? So don't give up on lectures and lecture discussions. They are very effective in a synchronous environment. Website explorations. I love using this to take my students out to a really cool website, okay, on Civil War. So we take them out there. Wikipedia is not a good, that is not a good example. Okay, here's one from the History Channel. Okay, so you can go out there, you can teach from a really good website. I don't know why that shows up there. Okay, and not only teach from it, but you can actually, you can actually show them together videos. Okay, so you can take them out to YouTube, get out there, you can show them a really cool video on the Civil War, and you just bring it right up on your computer. So this works right along there. As long as you're sharing the presentation,
This video was made possible by Nord.
they will see exactly what it is you're seeing. Unlimited. And then finally, you have access to a lot of other professionals, people that might not otherwise be able to come to your class. I think I talked about this on Friday, not sure, but I have a colleague of mine in Boston that uses my textbook, and once a year, usually in the fall, sometimes she'll call me and say, "Hey, would you come online in my Synchronous class and let my students ask you questions about your book?" Absolutely. I'm thrilled to do something like that. I'm not thrilled about getting on an airplane and flying to Boston for a 1-hour class, even though I love to go to Boston. Okay. It just it doesn't make sense to do that. But I would be glad to go online. So start looking for others. You got friends that are teaching in other schools. Maybe they teach it in a way that's different than the way you teach, but a way in which some of your students would really benefit. Look for those other professionals. Great way to use a synchronous session. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about is blended classrooms, flipped classrooms. Some people use the terms interchangeably. Other people see that there is a distinction between the two. But let's talk about a flipped classroom for a second. A flipped classroom is becoming more and more accepted, especially in this era now. Sometimes the schools like to call them hybrid because that's a word they've heard before. But for us educators, it's the flipped classroom that we're really talking about here, where obviously in a flipped classroom, we use the classroom time that we have in a synchronous mode for discussions, for clarifications, for expansion of ideas. Okay. And we use course materials that we want them to access in a asynchronous mode. Okay. And so on Friday, we talked a little bit about some of these kinds of materials. And I just want to demonstrate some of those to you today. Okay. In a course that I have on technology in the classroom, we talk about different kinds of materials: text, visual, and web-based. Okay, so with some simple text-based material, Microsoft Word, nothing fancy. Okay, you can create asynchronous materials that you can use in a flipped classroom environment. Now look at this example of simple text-based material. Nothing fancy here, but she's taken information that was buried inside a workbook or a chapter of a textbook, and she's brought them out to her students. I need you to be able to differentiate between symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment. I need to be able for you to understand what anemia is all about. I need you to know that. And it's buried within a 40-page chapter of a nursing book on blood. Okay? So I am going to create my own material, teacher-made material. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to cut, copy, and paste. I am going to steal and borrow and copy from any place I can find that does that teaches this material the way I want to teach it. So I'll show you some more pictures. Maybe I copied that right out of the book. We'll talk about copyright in a minute. Okay? We'll talk about, I'll copy this text material right from a book and maybe format it a little differently. Okay? I'm going to show you the symptoms that I want to make sure you know how to do. And I'm doing it in about 4 pages, right? Rather than 40 pages. Lots of pictures, maybe some websites in here. Certainly, I'm going to ask you some questions when we get to the end because I want to make sure you got it. None of this is in a textbook. I'm going to create it myself. Simple text-based material. She created a pretty cool handout. Somebody else created a quiz. Okay? She just created the quiz right there. This is asynchronous, but when I bring it to my synchronous class, I can bring this up and say, hey, out of 20 of you, 18 of you missed question 11. Let's talk about this. Why did you pick B instead of C? Okay. Others create handouts. Others create study guides. It's just simple material. So consider using those in a flipped classroom. Movies. Okay. We talked about this. I showed you this.
Welcome to Fetal Surveillance course. My name is Evgenia Karitanov. I will be your instructor for this course, which is for...
Make your own videos. Give them to the students outside the classroom. Watch this video before we have our synchronous session. Come to class, go into the chat room, and discuss the major elements of that movie. And you did it with a free package called Screencast-O-Matic. On a more advanced level, take a look at what I call the hyperbook. Again, we mentioned some of that. This is a flipped tool. Okay? A hyperbook. A hyperbook differs from text material in that it's more inclusive. It's an entire lesson that's done asynchronously. Okay? And then they send it back to you. They filled in the hyperbook. You've given them activities to do. You've shown them additional resources if they want to learn more. You have flipped your classroom. Now you use the synchronous session. Now, I don't know if I'm sure you've all done synchronous classes, last year as your students were finishing up. Did you spend 6 hours doing that? Probably not. Student can't handle 6 hours of this. Okay? But if you give them these flipped materials first, then they definitely can read ahead, and then you can go through and answer questions. The last one I'll show you, again, is a little bit more challenging, but it's a lot more fun to do. It's called the interactive lesson. It's a fancy PowerPoint that can be used in a flipped classroom. The student goes through this all by themselves. Okay. Interactive. They click, they follow instructions, they answer questions. Sorry about that. They get feedback. Okay. This is the materials for a flipped classroom. And then there's a third one that I didn't show you that I'd like to just take 2 seconds and show you. And that's called a virtual tour. You use Microsoft Word to create web pages. A virtual tour. This is the web page. Okay, it has links so the kids can go learn some more. It has websites that you want them to visit. It's all can be done fairly easily. Now, as I promised to you on Friday, this is the textbook that I use in my class. It's called Teaching with Technology, Mastering the 5th Level of the Technology Domain. I won't subject you to my little discussion, but basically what this says at this level is that you are creating your own material. You're not using material that a publisher thinks you need to have. It's not on the CD-ROM that came with your textbook. This is material that you're creating. And these are the tools that help you flip your classroom. Okay? Remember, the concept behind a flipped classroom is simple. You do the reading and you get some of the knowledge material, the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy. You do that on your own. When you come to class, we look at exploring that further. We have discussions. We have labs. We have chat sessions. We have discussion boards, the things that we can do best synchronously. Okay, so after we put all of these materials together in the next day or two, which it will include the videos from our sessions, okay, it will include the PowerPoint presentations that Dr. Hanson and I have been using. I will also send you a PDF version of the book that you can use. And I hope maybe it might become for you a impetus for a future in-service training. I don't know if I've had any of the OLSH teachers in my class. Anybody want to admit to it? You saw what happened to poor Julia when she said something, or whoever that was that said something. Anybody want to admit to being in my class? Okay, you're out of it then. So, but I'm hoping that you grab the book and start looking at how you can prepare your own materials. So, some final suggestions and tips about synchronous learning. Notice that some of them are the same as asynchronous, okay, which is okay. If you're going to create a synchronous lesson, you need to be ready for it. The students need to be ready for it. Okay. No one should start a synchronous session right away, especially K to 12, maybe even more especially 9 to 12. There ought to be some humanistic interaction. You don't just want to jump in with a synchronous session. How are they doing? How's the parents? How's the family? Anything going on with this virus? Okay. So always allow some time for that. I always ask the participants to keep their cameras on. Some of you have opted to turn yours off, and that's okay. As a host, there's nothing I can do about that one way or another. But in a regular workshop, ask them to keep the cameras on, okay? Because it helps with things like formative assessment. At least you can have them nod their heads, give you a thumbs up, give you some indication that they're still alive, okay? Because if they don't keep their cameras on, I will call on them. I will, you know, and I don't follow this advice at all. I probably should. You probably should. But cold calling a student isn't real nice. And, you know, you probably didn't like it when you were in school, and your students probably don't like it when you do it to them. So, you know, the idea is ask the question, give them a few seconds to think about it, and then call on somebody. I usually call on them when I don't, you know, if I don't see them on the camera, or if it looks like they're answering their email while they're supposed to be listening to me. But other than that, good idea. And then last one, flipped classroom, blended learning. Think about giving them asynchronous things to do before they come into your synchronous session. I got a really interesting little video. This will be in the PowerPoint presentation. It's just a few minutes long. If you're not comfortable or familiar with the term flipped classroom, this is a really nice little video that compares flipped classroom with blended learning. And really, they're kind of the same thing. The only difference is blended learning is something that's more considered inside a traditional classroom, how we can bring technology in, whereas the flipped classroom is more of an online kind of a concept where if you're going to do something at home, you're going to do something in the classroom. Okay? All right. I'm done. I am more than excited to answer any questions, talk to you about anything that we have covered. Also, know that if you do look at the book and decide that maybe this is something you want to try, send me an email, okay, tome@rmu.edu, and ask for some example materials. In other words, I'll send you one of the students' interactive lesson if you want to take a closer look at it. Be glad to do that for you. Send you whatever I can to help you with this. Okay, question?
If you could give 1 to 2 points that teachers should do correctly right out of the gate to get all students on board, whether they're at home or in their classroom, what would be those 2 pieces of advice?
Okay, I'd say if we're going to be doing this online, I said, I don't know if you guys remember, when I sent the email invitation out, I sent an invitation that said, look, we're going to do this on Friday morning at 9 o'clock. I will be in the same room Thursday between 4 and 4:30. Log in, check out your technology, see if it works, and we'll say hi to one another. Some of you took advantage of that. Others of you obviously didn't need it because you came right up on Thursday morning or Friday morning. But for your kids, the one thing I would really encourage is to do something individual with them, or at least in very small groups. Let them log in and make sure their technology is working. Nothing is worse than having a problem with your mic, your webcam doesn't work, the network connection is too slow, whatever it might be. So that would be one big tip I would give you for teaching online. The other big tip would be to have a session with them, one of your first group sessions, and talk about etiquette. Talk about what I want you to do in these environments and what I don't want you to do. How you're supposed to interact with each other, and the things I don't want to see happen in a virtual environment like this. Give them their expectations. If I send you material to read before a synchronous session, read it, because we're going to discuss it and I'll know if you didn't. Okay? So set them up for success. Let them know what's expected of them. And I think they'll do much better. So those would be a couple of tips.
Thank you.
Okay, Tim, you wanna wrap this up for us? Maybe in front of the camera so that everybody can see you.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. First off, thank you so much, Larry. Mary Hansen for joining us. Pat Litzinger. Pat and Larry, it's great to reconnect, and your support in this, all of your support in this has been fantastic. I've loved this session personally. I've really gotten a lot out of it. I like the comparison today between the platforms and things to consider and ways in which they can be used. I like that you had the chat up today so that the teachers could share information with you and other teachers as for suggestions of how to use it. Allison, of course, that's one of the things Deborah and I have already talked about as we go into our in service next week, doing a session, sort of a round robin session where teachers who already know how to use these technologies share them with other teachers. Something we've done over the years is very effective and was particularly effective in March before we started going online. We had a whole day session doing that. One of the things you talked about as well is creating and implementing lessons. Our teachers are receiving 48 hours for attending these workshops, but they will also be getting 48 hours for creating and implementing lessons using strategies from the workshops. So that's one of the things we'll be coming around and looking at and observing. And as I said last week, now they have a little bit of time to play with these things. Now they have a little bit of time to share information with each other that will go a long way to getting prepared. And I love the last little tidbits that you shared when Deborah asked the question. Maybe that first session is more about, getting to know each other, getting to know how to use the technology together, the etiquette and so forth. Then we worry about getting right into instruction. Those are things that have to be set up from the get-go, that little reminders that go a long way. It's one of the things we actually learned as part of the process back in March, where we jumped in with learning, and we had to sort of back off and say, okay, kids, here's the guidelines. Cameras have to be on. You mute yourself when you're in the sessions. Find a way to ask questions, use the chat session, make sure you're dressed appropriately. So we had to sort of backtrack and do those things, whereas right now we know that's part of the setup for any synchronous instruction. So this has been fantastic. It really has. I truly appreciate it. And I know our faculty does as well, learned a lot, and really can't thank you enough.
Well, let me close by expressing my appreciation for you as Catholic teachers. You could be maybe someplace else making more money, but I guarantee you can never be anywhere else where you'll make more of a difference. OLSH has set a standard for its graduates that is well known throughout Western Pennsylvania. And I can tell you through personal experience that You took two young ladies that I'm not sure were destined to be college graduates and made them both extremely successful. They are educators in their own right and just really good people. And OLSH looks at many different aspects of teaching. It's not just learning about the Civil War, it's about learning how to be a person. And I just applaud you for that, and thank you for being a Catholic teacher, and wish you all the success in the world in the upcoming school year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Have a good day, everyone.
Great job, Larry.
Thank you.
Everybody.